All right, and let's share screen and jump over here. Okay, can you guys all see my screen? All right, awesome. So let's start off with reading. Oh, okay, I think I just clicked something that was not supposed to be clicked. All right, anyway, let's disregard that. Let's get started with reading and writing to a file using Python. So let me see, can I move this over? No, okay, we'll just maximize it. All right, so let me create a new file in this folder, and I'll just call it like, I don't know, thing.txt. And this is going to be a text file. So I could say, hi, I am a text file, and it's very boring because text files are extremely boring and don't necessarily help us out very much. So we save it, and I've got this function called python demo.py. So how can I access this text file in my Python script? What do I need to do in order to get at it?
You need to import it.
Okay, so how can I do that?
I don't know if you can just do like import thing or from thing import and then a little star. I don't know.
So the from import stuff is only really for importing things from a file that is a Python file or a package. So what I could say is I could import like math, for example, and that would import the entire, like all the math functions in Python. Or I could do something like from math, import, I don't know, hyperbolic sine. And that imports the sine, hyperbolic sine function from the math library in Python. Now, for files, we can't really do an import thing.txt. If we do that, you can see it doesn't really like it. So instead, what we have to do is create, and this is something that you'll see in other languages as well. You basically are going to create a variable for the file. So has anyone done this before in Python?
So where you do like import whatever as, and then you declare it there.
So that is also for libraries. So what you could do is say like import math as the best library ever, which it is definitely not. But then you could say something like the best library ever dot signage or something like that. So again, import is only for Python libraries and functions and Python files, not non-Python files. For those, for the txt file especially, what we would do here is I would say something like txt file equals, and that creates our variable. And now I'm going to say open. And as we see here, this opens a file and returns a stream. So if we go down, does this tell us a bit about what a stream is? Usually should. It doesn't. Okay, interesting. Oh, actually, wait, here we go. So open returns a file object whose type depends on the mode. And the modes for reading and writing, there are a ton. But basically, the easiest ones to note are R, W, and X. So R here means that you open a file and just read it and close it. W means that you can open the file and do stuff in the file. And then X means that you can create a new file and then change it. So let's go here. So if I hit this, now it says, all right, put the file in, and our file name is going to be thing.txt, and the mode is going to be, let's say I want to read the file. And let's say I want to print text file. All right, so if I run this, hopefully you guys can see what's down here at the bottom. So this definitely does not look like, hi, I'm a text file and I'm very boring. So what txt file is essentially a stream of data that is coming from this text file. And it represents it using, well, it tells us the name, tells us that it's in read-only mode, and the encoding of the file, which we don't really need to know for our purposes right now. But let's say we want to see the actual contents of the file. Then I would read the file using txt_file.read. And if we run this again, now we see that we can read the contents of the text file and say, this is I have a text file and I'm very boring, which is exactly what we wrote in thing.txt. You can also choose how much of this you want to read. So let's say I only want to read in the hi, then I will only read in the first 2 characters of the file using that little 2. And I hit run, and it only returns hi. So that is basically the 101 version of how to read a Python file. There is not much else, there is one other thing too. Let's say this is the second line. But in a text file, we can add multiple lines, right? But if I do text file.read here and run that, text file.read reads the entire file and prints it out. Now imagine that I have a text file with like 1,000 rows or something, which is a lot. Do we want to print out 1,000 rows in the console? Not necessarily. So instead, what I can do is I can say text file dot read line, and then that will basically read out a line. And then I can run this again a second time, and it'll read the second line. So this is really useful for things like for loops, where you can go line by line through something, through a file, and analyze each and every line, which is really helpful. You can also do read lines, like plural. I just copy paste this, and we have like 14 lines. Let's read lines, and then we can specify, let's say that I want to only read like 5 lines, and hit run. That usually ends up working. Okay, well, anyway, yeah, that's kind of weird. Hang on, let me see why it is not. Oh, okay, never mind. So yeah, the read lines method returns a list containing each line in the file. So disregard that. Basically, if we run it, it puts each line as an item in a list, which is kind of awkward. And that's the main reason why we never really use read lines. You either will use read line or just read and specify the number of characters. Does that make sense? Any questions about how to read a Python file? Or read a file in Python? Okay, I'm going to take that as a no. So the second thing that we can do is we can also write to files. We do that by switching the R to a W. And here, I'm going to just like delete this. And we'll save this. And all right, so does anybody have experience with writing to Python files by any chance? I'm going to assume not. So again, the first thing that we do when we're writing to a Python file is add in a parameter to our open function, which is either we can append stuff to it or we can write to it. So the difference between writing and appending is writing will overwrite the contents of a file, but appending adds it to the end. So here, for example, I could do txt file dot write, and now we open it up and it says string. Now say, this has been hacked by Python or something. And if I run this file, we don't get any output, But if I open up thing.txt, it changed it to what we told it to write to the file, which is kind of crazy. But we can also append by using the aid tool. And instead of using .write, actually, yeah, .write should probably work here. Just do take 2 and run that. We go here. As you can see, it added take 2 to the end of the file. So that's the main difference between the write mode, which is the W, and that overwrites everything, and the append mode, or the A, which adds stuff to the end of the file. And there's one last thing that's really important to do, which is to close the file. So what we'll do here is a text file that closes. And basically what this means is I'm going to open the text file at this specific place in append mode, or in write mode, I guess we can do that. I'm going to write to the file, then I'm going to close the file, so that way I don't have a continuous stream going in the background and taking up memory. And here, we can also just do like txt file, well, if we want. These are the main functions that you will use when reading and writing to files in Python. Does that make sense? Any questions about that?
So with CSV, we can skip the close if we use with open. Is it the same with the text file? Opens it and closes at the same time. I mean, not at the same time, but it takes care of itself.
You can. I personally just always recommend closing your file at the end. But you're correct. For using the with open, you don't need to close it.
Okay, so you recommend we close it? It's better.
Personally, I usually do. Just because it helps to avoid like confusion later if you forget to close it. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
So yeah. Okay. So do we want to try messing with CSV files for a little bit now, seeing as Azuka did mention them, and that's the next step. So let's see. We'll just call it like data.csv. Okay. And let's see. Let's call what is a thing that you can buy online?
Handles.
Handles?
Handles.
Okay. Okay. So let's see. What are? I guess we. Let's roll with it. So I don't know. We can do like item code, manufacturer, material, and I don't know, handleness. Where handleness is, I have no clue what. So basically, a CSV file is an Excel sheet. Oh, candles. Okay, never mind. I do not know why I thought that was handle. Okay, candleness then. That's definitely got to be a word that we can use. So a CSV file is the same thing as an Excel sheet. So again, you've got your columns here, and the rows are the things going down it. So let's say we have an online retailer that sells 4 candles. We'll say item code is number 1. Manufacturer could be, I don't know, like Target. Material, wax. Candleness is like 15. And then we could create another one whose item code is like 10. And we could say it's like, I don't know, home. Material is paper, because paper candles should definitely not exist, but they are in this fictional universe. And the candleness rating is a -30. And what's the third thing we could do? Yeah, we could do like, I don't know, item code 45. We could do, I don't know, Best Buy. that makes candles out of DVDs for some absurd reason, and we'll make this like 143. So this is our CSV file, and let me see if I can pull this up in Excel real quick. Oops, my files will load. Example. Oops, no, that's wrong one. Up. Demos. Here we go. All right, let me switch my share real quick. Once this loads. Perfect. All right, and where is Zoom? That's why you weren't showing up. And you're still not showing. Okay, anyway. This is what our CSV file looks like if I pull it up in Excel. So again, I've got my item code, got my manufacturer, material, and honestly here, we could probably just delete the quotes at this point. It's not really needed. And let's delete these. And again, a CSV file and Excel file, basically the exact same thing for all intents and purposes for us. Save this, keep using the format. And yeah, let's say I want to read this into Python. So go back here and oops, let me reshare this. So how do we open up a CSV file in Python? I think Lazuka mentioned something about with open. Would anybody like to explain how that works or what we need to do for it? No? Oh, go ahead.
I think I know. So you do with open and you open parentheses, you write the file name, then you specify the mode. Or if you don't specify, we'll just be reading it.
Yep.
And then you say as whatever name you want to call it, data. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now what?
And then I think you have a function called reader. So you set that to a variable called, you can call it reader. And then reader equals data file thing dot reader.
Perfect. But where does the reader function come from? You're right that we have to do something like this, right? But it doesn't recognize the reader function.
Import CSV.
Perfect. Thank you.
Oh yeah.
Yep. So import CSV, and then we can do CSV.reader. That goes over the CSV file, which is our iterable, which is our data file thing, which is our string. So now that I have the reader set up, what do I do next?
So now you can iterate over data reader and you can get your rows or your columns.
So let's do that, right? Let's say for row and data reader, I'll just do like a print row and see what happens. All right, so let's run this. And as you can see, look at that. We now have our data.csv file, our Excel file, in Python. And it's got each row very nicely laid out for us. So this is the first way that we can read a file, a CSV file in Python. But as always, there are more ways. So we'll keep the with open as data file, but we're going to change this from CSV reader to dict reader. Has anyone seen that function before? The dict reader function.
Yeah.
Okay, so what does it do? Before I hit the run button.
think it gives you each row as a dictionary.
Perfect. Yeah. Also, Nicholas, the screen should definitely be unfrozen. Is it frozen for anyone else?
No.
Okay, cool. But yeah, it'll basically turn our CSV file into a dictionary instead. Paste it back in. Hit the run button. And well, okay, not really a dictionary, more of an ordered dictionary, but it turns each row basically into a dict. So here, let me just clean this up a little bit. Delete the spaces. And rerun that. So let's say for each candle, for example, I wanted to get the manufacturer for every single candle. Then I would just print row and then manufacturer, and we could run it, and it tells us where each candle was made. So that makes it a lot easier for us to deal with CSV files. So does that kind of make sense? Any questions about that? So this is the main way that we can read CSV files. Now, there is another thing that we can do. In addition to reading CSV files, we can also write to CSV files. So much like we have the CSV reader function, we can also add in the CSV writer function. But we can't really do a 4-row in data reader thing. That won't really work for us. Oh, and also we need to change the mode here. And this should be so. Yeah. Okay. Let me also change the mode. So how can I write to a CSV file? Well, it's basically doing the same thing as we did before, but this time I'd have to do something like data writer dot write row, and now we just need to add a row to our CSV file. So again, if we go back here, remembering we have an item code and manufacturer material and some other random things, I could say item code is 13. We could say, I don't know, like code platoon. We could say that a material is the binary code or something, and the candleness is like 1,000,000. And let's just run this and see what happens. So if I run this and I go back to data.csv, look at that. We added a row to our CSV file. Just again, by appending it using this mode A, append that to our data writer, and that adds a row. Does that make sense? Any questions?
So if you have to write like 50 rows, you have to write 50 different write row, or you can do write rows.
So you can use write rows as well. See, data writer got write rows. I have actually not used write rows before, so this will be a little bit of experimentation. But here, let's see what happens if I add in, let's say 2 rows. So it's like 15. Let's different number. Let's type something, and hit save. We'll delete that one. So this one, theoretically, should write 2 rows. Okay, it takes 1 argument. So we turn this into a list of rows. Maybe let's see what happens. We do that. Aha, yes, that did indeed work. So because I turned this into a list of rows, so now this has 2 rows in it. It adds and writes 2 rows. So yes, you can use write rows to do that. Alternatively, the other thing you can do is create like a for loop, and you can do like for row in rows to be added, where rows to be added is rows that you made previously. You could say something like data writer dot write row, if that makes sense.
And if you have to write a CSV file from scratch, just create one.
Yeah.
I know you need to put in the columns, the field names. How would you do that?
All right, so to create a file, we'd use the X command. So the data2.csv, but then we change the mode to X. Let me think. Well, the first thing we would want to do is create a new CSV writer for the file. Let's just go from there. If I run this, ooh, interesting. Okay. Here, let me. Yeah, so most of the time, also, just like full disclosure, for CSV files, usually you will not create a CSV file inside your Python code. You'll usually either write a new one,
Well,
or
then maybe just change the field names if you want to call them something else. You already have a CSV file and you want to change the keys.
Okay, let's see. If you were to do that, then you could probably just do that using a something like pandas, to be honest, which would probably be a lot easier than using the CSV library. But that, okay, you could also just create a new file there too. So in order to create a new file, again, we go back to what we were doing before. So you can't actually use a create file in the with open. So what you have to do is say like new CSV equals, let me just delete this empty file there. I would say open data2.csv and then set the mode as X, which is a mode to create the file. And then I would do with open data2, and then also I would have to do new CSV close and close the file. But here and now I would have to write to this new file, create a writer object. And then I would have to do, let's see. Pretty sure there used to be like a write header function for CSV files that you could also use. But let me double check. Yeah. So you'd write the CSV here, and then you'd also have to have some field names for the header. So if we go back to our data.csv, you see how up here we have like the item code, manufacturer, like the column headings. We also need to specify those when we're writing to our CSV file. So I specify those using field names. I think it's field names. Let me just yeah, field names, and then you could call it like, I don't know, name and like address or some or birthday or something like that if you wanted to make a CSV file of names and birthdays. And then after that, I would also use dict writer for this. So I would first write the header, And then after that, you could write row, and then you just write it as a dictionary. And you would do like name, and then I would do, I don't know, that, and then birthday, and like 1, 2, 3, or something like that. So if we were to run this file now, interesting. Oh, there we go. That's the reason why. Sorry, that goes there. Let's try that again. Okay, never mind. So the file already exists. We delete the file. Because if the file already exists, you can't really run, or you can't create it. So if I run this again, it creates the data2 file. We open that up, and it adds in our header of name and birthday, and then it adds in our row, which we specified here. I'm not sure if that helped or not, as it is a little bit confusing, but there are some good documentation sources that I can send along if this is something you guys are interested in practicing and learning more on your own too.
When it writes to the file, why does it have a space in between the lines? Is that going to affect when we read it back?
Definitely shouldn't. But hey, let's double check. So I'll do mode R, delete this stuff, open, and I'll just say reader, and take that away, and we'll just have this data, and then at this point we'll just print data. Oh, sorry. Let's just copy this actually. Use for row in data. And I'll just print the row, run that. Interesting. So yeah, actually it does show the spaces, which is kind of weird. I'm not entirely sure why those would be shown. But that is a very good question. Yeah, because I can delete the spaces and rerun it, and it works perfectly. So yeah, that is interesting. I'm not sure, but I will look into this when you guys are working on your problem set and hopefully get back to you all later about it. But yeah, that is really weird. That's a good eye, Tiffany. Thank you for catching that. Any other questions about reading, writing to CSV files? All right. If not, here, let me just delete this real quick. We're going to talk about the lecture material for today, which will quite literally take probably less than 10 minutes at the very most, and then we can jump straight into problems for the rest of the night. So the topic for today is something that you all have definitely done more than a couple of times, which is, where did you go? There we go, Python modules. So this goes back to when the question I asked you guys at the beginning about how do we import a file in Python? And a lot of you guys said, use the import command. Again, the import command does not work for files that are not Python files, but this is how we import our libraries. So for example, if I wanted to use random numbers in Python, what's the thing I have to do in order to get random numbers in Python?
Import random.
Yes, import random. Okay, so what does this do? This imports the random library. And if I want to create a generated random number, do print random dot random. And we can run that. and it gives us a very random float number. We can run it again. And what does running this do? Well, it says, the first thing it says is, tells Python, hey, there's this thingy out there called random. I need you to import this for me. And it says, okay, I'll take all the functions in random and put them into the memory. And the next thing we're doing is we're saying, hey, I want you to print something. What do you want to print? I want you to print the result of the random function. Okay, where is that random function from? It's from a library called random. It goes, oh, okay. So I'll go to random, pluck out that random function, and run it. That's the way the import statement works. Similarly, we could do import math. And what I could do is I could do like print math dot floor, which is basically like truncating or taking out the decimal of like 3.14. And what this will do is it'll say, all right, I want to import all the functions from math. And Python will say, okay. And then I'm going to print, and it says, all right, hey, I have this number, 3.14. I want you to run the floor function on it. Where do I get the floor function? From math. What's math? Oh, math is a thingy that I told it to import way back when. And then it goes to math, it finds the function, it runs the function, and chunks it out. And just to make sure, we run it, and we do indeed see that the floor of 3.14 is 3, because that's what 3.14 is, without the decimals at the end. Now, another thing that we could do is, let's be honest, math itself has a ton of functions. I mean, like, just look at how long this list is. Like, this is huge. But let's say that I only wanted the value of pi, and I don't need any of this other stuff. Right? So let's say like I was writing a function that did like, I don't know, area of a circle area, and it took in the parameter like radius. This would like return. What's the formula for the area of a circle?
Is it pi r squared?
Yep. So it'll be like pi times radius or squared, something like that. But pi isn't defined, right? So option 1 is we could do return math.pi. But this requires us to import everything from math. So in addition to that, we have the sine function and exponential and logarithms and all this other stuff, quite frankly, that we just don't need. So instead, we could say from math, import pi. And now we can just return pi times the radius squared. So if I wanted to print out, let's say, the circle area of something with radius 1, that would just return the area of, well, pi, which is exactly what we're looking for. But now though, let's say I wanted to take the sign of a number, right? And I would print sign let's say 1.5. Whoa, it says sign's not defined. Why is sign not defined? Because we only imported the value pi from math. We did not import anything else, so we didn't import the sign function. So there's one last cool trick. Now let's say that pi is a very boring name, and we want to call this something else that sounds better than pi. Let's say we can call it like the coolest number in math or something like that. So if we want to change the name of how we refer to pi in this program, I could say from math, import pi as the best number ever. Now, as you can see here, let me delete this. There is a little squiggly line around pi. Why? Because pi is not defined. But hang on, didn't we just import pi? We did just import pi, but we changed the name of pi here. And we changed the name of pi to the best number ever. So if I change that pi to the best number ever, well, what is the best number ever? Best number ever is pi. Okay, where does pi come from? It comes from math. And again, run our function again, we should get the exact same result. So that is basically a very quick rundown on how to import stuff. using Python. I know this is something that you guys have used a lot for your unit testing, but this is going to come in extremely handy in a couple of weeks at the very, very latest. So it's important to get the how and why this works down as early as possible. Does this make sense? Any questions about how this works? Okay. That's basically it for lecture today. Let me go ahead and pull up your homework for today. So that way everyone can get started as soon as possible. All right. Homework is bank accounts. So there are, I think, 3 or 4 parts to this. Yeah, 3 parts and then an optional part. And you guys have just about 2 hours to get this done, so I won't spend too long telling you about what needs to happen. But basically, you're going to create some classes and some methods in order to create a bank account functionality. So you're going to create some classes for like banks and accounts, a couple of methods. You're going to want to do some error handling and by raising exceptions, which is something that I believe we may have talked about in my class a couple of weeks ago. But if not, exceptions are basically errors that you can throw that will stop your code from running. And again, Google how to create them. It's very helpful and something we use a ton in testing. You can also create like some other classes like an owner class and properties, which is super helpful. And then here, they want you to use a CSV file for loading data, which is actually in the support part. So if we go to like account owners.csv, you see we have a bunch of account and owner IDs. We have a bunch of owners. We have names and addresses and stuff. So you'll want to create your classes using the provided schemas in the support files. And then let's see what else is there. And then you just want to use a little bit of inheritance at the end. That's about it. So this will probably take close to the full 2 hours because there is a lot. So I'll send out the group pairings pretty shortly here. But before I do so, does anybody have questions, comments, concerns, things of that nature before we jump into it? Okay. I'm assuming there aren't any questions. So let's see. We've got a pretty full class today. So we've got, let's say, about 20 people. So I'll create like 7-ish groups. And oh boy. Yeah, all right. Okay, actually, wait, let me change it and make it 6. It'll be a little bit easier for numbers. Okay, nope, stop flipping. Oh my goodness. All right. Sorry, I'm using a new group making thing that tends to make a lot of really annoying sound effects because I'm not sure why. So we've got 2 groups of 4 and 4 groups of 3. And that should probably be okay. I will paste it in the chat. And let's get breakout rooms opened up. I'll create like 10 rooms. And rooms are now open. Feel free to hop in with your groups whenever you're ready and talk to you guys soon. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, let me or Hyder know and we'll hop in.